It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for Season 9 of The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some new photos from the next episode, 9-10 of The Walking Dead, Season 9, Episode 10, called Omega, as well as a sneak peek for the next episode. Now, these sneak peeks and images are related to Alpha being unmasked and Whisper's origin story being revealed in this episode. Before getting into the sneak peek, I do want to show the images, and then once I get to the images that are related to the sneak peek, I'll jump into the sneak peek and kind of discuss that a little bit. First up, we have this shot of Magna, Daryl, Yumiko, and Tara on the guard tower at the hilltop. They're watching something. Most likely at this point they are watching Alpha and the Whispers pulling up to the hilltop, and obviously they're gonna have Luke and Alden as prisoners, hence why they look so shocked here. Then we have this shot, which is also related. We have some Whispers spying on hilltop. We did see this in the main trailer for the second half, and also this is, I think, connected to the promo teaser that was released where we had Alpha, Beta, and some Whispers spying on the group. So this, I think, is also connected to that, but obviously the Whispers are spying on Hilltop, and most likely this is gonna take place right before Alpha and the Whispers pull up with Luke and Alden as prisoners. Then we have this shot, which is set at night. We have Connie, Kelly, Magna, and Yumiko, and they're just talking. It's nighttime, like I said. Most likely they're looking for Luke and Alden. What's very interesting is that Tara is not there with them. There was another sneak peek that was released where we have Tara and the same group that we see here, plus some other Hilltoppers, looking for Luke and Alden. And it's daytime in that sneak peek. They find Luke and Alden's horse, and they realize that this was not done by just walkers. Most likely some Whispers have something to do with what happened. Now Tara makes the decision for them to go back because she thinks that it's not safe being out here because they don't know what they're dealing with. There's some tension because Connie and Kelly want to find Luke, but the sneak peek ends. We don't know what happens after. But because Tara and the other people that were there in the sneak peek are not here, I'm leaning towards maybe Tara and the other Hilltoppers go back while this group stays and continues looking for Luke and Alden. Now this makes them very vulnerable to being captured by the Whispers as well, but obviously we do know they're gonna go back to Hilltop because they're there when Alpha and the other Whispers pull up to the hilltop. Then we have some images that's connected to the Whispers' origin story. We do know the guy in the center, his name is Frank, and he has a very, very close connection to Alpha and Lydia. He's actually Lydia's father. But we'll get to that more when we're looking at the sneak peek. But this is just an image of them in some sort of basement. They are waiting, and this is pretty much early on during the apocalypse. So the outbreak just happened when this is going on. So this is basically a flashback as part of the Whisper's origin story. So we have a flashback of Alpha before the outbreak happened or during the outbreak. Then we have this shot, which is pretty cool. We have Alpha right there, Samantha Morton as Alpha. We have the other survivors in the background. Like I said, this is early on during the apocalypse or the outbreak, but we have Alpha unmasked in a way. Obviously, when Alpha actually unmasks in the next episode, which I hope we see, she's going to be different than what we see here. Not only is she going to have a bald head, but she's going to be more tough, more hardened, and maybe more darker than what we see here. But we do have Frank in the background as well. Next up, we have this shot of Frank, Alpha, and Lydia as a kid. So this is Lydia as a young kid. So that's pretty cool that we're getting that. Again, I don't know how I feel about getting a flashback for Alpha and the Whispers maybe, because I don't want them to humanize the Whispers, because they're just not the right group for that. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and to have an open mind and to see what they do with the Whispers' backstory. But I hope that they don't try to humanize Alpha and the Whispers, because they're just not the right group for that. Then we have this shot of Alpha and Lydia. Then we have this shot of Alpha and Frank. Now, what is very obvious, not only on these images, but also based on the sneak peek, is that Frank doesn't have a close relationship to Alpha or Lydia. Not that he's an abusive husband or anything. We don't see that, at least not in the sneak peek. But we do note that maybe he's not the greatest father, or maybe the greatest husband even. And then this final shot of Alpha. It is very interesting that we're getting flashbacks for the Whisperers. Definitely very, very interested to see what they do. Regardless, I might not like what they do, but I'm interested to see what they do. And I'm definitely very, very interested to see how Samantha Morton plays Alpha and what she does with the Alpha character. We see a little bit of that with the flashback. Again, she's not really Alpha when we see her in the sneak peek, so we can't really judge how she's going to play Alpha based on how she's playing Alpha in the sneak peek. Now, moving on into the sneak peeks, and I'm not going to have the audio be super loud because this video could get flagged, and I'm even going to skip through parts of it and only leave sections where I actually say something about it. So the sneak peek, which is also the opening minutes of season 9 episode 10, which is very interesting. They're starting with the flashback. That's kind of interesting. But we start with that exact basement where we have Alpha and Lydia and Frank staying at during the outbreak, when the outbreak is happening. As you can see, it says day 23. It's been 23 days since the apocalypse happened. Then we get our first look at Alpha here. That's pretty cool. Samantha Morton as Alpha. This first conversation that Alpha and Frank have is related to, the outbreak. Frank says it's been 23 days, he's getting furious that nothing is being done and that they're stuck in a basement when everything is going to hell on the outside. Alpha has hope, but Frank thinks that they're just wasting time, waiting it out. We do get a bit of understanding into Alpha's, mentality here because she doesn't want Frank to talk like this, to be this negative when Lydia is around. So this shows how protective Alpha is of Lydia. We have Lydia saying we can't go out there because if we do, we'll get sick. We have to wait for the doctor so that they could make everything better. Again, I think this is related to Alpha as well. Maybe that's what Alpha told her. And it just goes back to Alpha protecting her and, not wanting her to be exposed to what's actually going on. Then we have Alpha singing a lullaby to Lydia. Now that's very interesting because if you think about it, there was also a lullaby playing when we had the Alpha reveal in the first promo that was released of Alpha. So that's very interesting that, they have that in there. The flashback switches back to Lydia as she is imprisoned at Hilltop. I loved how they brought those two together. We have Lydia saying, remember the look on his eyes, still remember coldness, worse. So she's talking about her father. So she's saying that he was a cold man and there was no emotion, there was no connection, there was no relationship. And that just goes to show how close Alpha and Lydia are and were, and how not close Lydia was with her father. Daryl is still there listening to them talk, which is very cool and interesting. We have Henry saying, not gonna lie, walking around wearing dead people's faces is pretty messed up. Now, this is not only cool because of what he's saying, because it is messed up, but also it connects to something Morgan said back in season 3 in the episode Clear. He said, I see people wearing dead people's faces. Now, obviously, that was an Easter egg. He wasn't seeing the Whisperers. But that being said, I think it's cool that they have this Easter egg in here now. Henry saying wearing dead people's faces is pretty messed up. So I thought that was a cool connection. Obviously, this is pretty cool, not just because of that alone, but also because of the connection Morgan and Henry have as well. Then Lydia responds with, thinking this place is not going to fall like any other place. That's messed up. And that just goes back to how she doesn't see hope in communities because, as she said in the previous episode, she's seen communities like this fall over and over again, her and her mother. We have Lydia thinking that Daryl is Henry's dad, which is very interesting. But we have Henry saying that Daryl is not his dad and that he's just looking at him as a favor to his mom, Carol, of course, and that he doesn't even want to be here. He doesn't even want to be leading or protecting me or being around. We have Lydia saying, I thought you said your mom died, which reveals that Henry told Lydia about his past and his biological mother. What's very interesting, we have Henry saying she's tough, not someone you want to mess with. Talking about Carol. I absolutely agree with that. And it's kind of interesting how Lydia follows that up, which I'll get to in a minute. But Henry kind of switches gears a little bit and asks, what happened to your dad? And then Lydia gets a quick flash in her head about his dad, Frank, being stabbed to death. They don't reveal who did it, but my money is on Alpha. I think Alpha killed Frank. Maybe Frank did something, but I think Alpha killed Frank, which is very interesting. But they don't reveal that, so I could be totally wrong about this. Lydia says my dad was a stupid man, obviously not wanting to reveal what happened to him in front of Henry. She says my mom, though, she kept me alive, she kept me safe, which just goes back to what I was saying earlier about Alpha being very protective of Lydia. And then she brings something up that I thought was interesting. She says she's a lot like your mom. So she's comparing Alpha and Carol, which is kind of an interesting comparison. Not that I agree with it 100%, but it's an interesting connection. She ends it with, you don't mess with her either, referring to Alpha. So she's saying, you don't mess with my mom either, just like you say, you don't mess with your mom. Of course, Carol. And we have Daryl still listening to everything. Now, what makes this very interesting is not only that conversation, but also the fact that Daryl and Carol are also close. And who knows, Daryl might even be thinking if she's right, if Alpha is as badass and comparing her to Carol, then we're in big trouble. And that's basically it. That's the end of the sneak peek or the opening minutes. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for daily uploads. And while you're at it, check out my gaming channel, Jedi Age Gaming.